All right, let's just dive right into this. When you think of a dangerous person, what immediately pops into your head? Most of us probably picture someone loud, maybe aggressive, just constantly surrounded by chaos, right? But today, we're going to look at some evidence that flips that whole idea on its head. In this explainer, we're exploring why the most formidable, truly untouchable person you will ever cross paths with is actually the one who healed entirely alone. So, I want to pose this question directly to you right out of the gate. Who is the most dangerous person you'll ever meet? Now, keep in mind, we're not talking about physical danger or unpredictable rage here. We're talking about pure emotional and psychological power in modern relationships. It's a level of resilience that literally shifts the entire power dynamic the second they walk into a room. And that brings us to what we call the rebuilt person. This is someone who was completely shattered by life, stripped down to absolute zero, and when everyone else disappeared, they chose to rebuild themselves from the ground up. The really crucial thing to understand here is that this person has seen the world without all those comforting little lies that usually protect us from reality. Because they hit rock bottom so hard that they became completely unrecognizable and still found the strength to claw their way back up, well, they walk away with one massive advantage. They absolutely no longer fear being alone, not even a little bit. To really understand this mindset, we're going to break down 5 clear signs of a rebuilt person: the death of approval, mastery of the silent forge, tactical discernment, integrity over throwaway language, and finally, patience is not permission. Let's see exactly why their silence is such an absolute superpower. All right, sign number 1, the death of approval, becoming fiercely self-reliant. Look at the stark contrast here between being convenient and being chosen. You see, when someone heals alone, they go through this fundamental core-level shift. They stop getting their power from who happens to be standing next to them. You know, most people out there are kind of acting like clones, constantly looking for someone else to mirror them or validate their existence. But because the rebuilt person faced their absolute hardest truths alone, they've built up this massive mental firewall against manipulation. They learned the hard way that the only person they could never, ever abandon was themselves. So they absolutely refuse to just be a convenient option for someone else to use. They demand to be actively chosen. If you aren't making them a priority, they're just going to move on, because they figured out that being alone is infinitely better than being with someone who makes you feel lonely. Moving right along to sign number 2, mastery of the silent forge, where the rebuilt gets strong. This one is all about their relationship with silence, and honestly, it's such a fascinating psychological pivot. Most of us view silence as awkward, right? Like it's boring or it's a problem that we desperately need to fix with some kind of background noise. But the rebuilt person, they view it entirely differently. To them, it's the silent forge. It's this incredibly intentional space of quiet where they actually build their strength. It's where the war against their own personal demons is fought and won. Think about it. While the rest of the world is desperately looking for a distraction through, toxic gossip or endless doom scrolling, the rebuilt person is using intentional quiet as a total sanctuary to recharge their batteries. Raj Shamani captures exactly why they retreat to this forge. He says, every human being has minimum 2 masks on. One is how they are with their family, and one how they are with just themselves. Anyone who has more than 2, stay away from them. And that hits the nail right on the head. Rebuilt people withdraw into their silence specifically to protect their peace from manipulative, multi-masked people who just drain their energy. Just look at the difference between maintaining a stable, grounded, authentic self versus the sheer exhaustion of constantly juggling multiple masks. The rebuilt person has already done the agonizingly hard work to lock in their authentic core. They have zero interest in exhausting themselves to keep up a facade, and they definitely don't have the patience to deal with people who are constantly switching their faces depending on the room they're in. And that actually brings us to a, frankly, staggering statistic: 96%. Sometimes when a rebuilt person just goes totally silent in the middle of an argument, people will accuse them of stonewalling. But usually, it's actually a form of physiological self-soothing. They're actively calming their nervous system down so they don't lash out and say something they'll regret. Why do they do this? Well, research shows that how a fight goes in just the first 3 minutes predicts the relationship's future with 96% accuracy. So they aren't ignoring you. They are literally trying to save their relationship from taking a fatal blow. Sign number 3, tactical discernment, becoming the ultimate bait stopper. So here's the thing. Straightforward, incredibly honest people are, unfortunately, very often the prime targets for narcissists. Because they're quote-unquote too good, they end up getting dragged right through the manipulative muck. But the rebuilt person, they've adapted. They've developed tactical discernment. This is the ability to see patterns of insults and contempt for exactly what they are, psychological daggers. Toxic people love to try and pass these little digs off as, oh, we're just being comfortable with each other. But the rebuilt person spots the pattern right away, and instead of taking the bait and arguing, they just disengage immediately. They just don't play the game anymore. And to pull this off, they frequently use a highly effective strategy known as gray rocking. Basically, this means intentionally holding back both good news and bad news from unsafe people. They do this because they've learned, usually the incredibly hard way, that their straightforwardness, their openness, was actually a massive liability when it was in toxic hands. Trying to speak up against disrespect just stopped working for them, so they went quiet. They became a gray rock to protect their peace. All right, sign number 4, integrity over throwaway language, when actions align with words. Listen, a rebuilt person values integrity above absolutely everything else. Because they had to put themselves back together piece by piece, they demand total, uncompromising alignment between what someone says and what they actually do in the real world. Just consider this viral breakdown from Chris GQ Perry. He made a list of what actually means nothing. Things like calling you baby, moving into your house, calling you his woman, giving you a baby, or even marrying you. To a rebuilt person, these can literally just be empty labels and meaningless milestones if the day-to-day actions don't back them up. They completely ignore throwaway language. Like when someone says, call me anytime, but then acts incredibly inconvenienced the second you actually pick up the phone. So what actually does mean something? Well, Perry delivers the absolute punchline right here. A man changing himself, his lifestyle, and his ways to keep you. That's what means something. And honestly, that is the literal definition of true integrity. Rebuilt people demand this level of sincere, often uncomfortable, honesty in action. And the best part? They offer the exact same thing in return. And because they hold on to this integrity, their entire communication style changes. They utilize what's called the 180-second rule. They focus intensely on using I statements and what psychologists call soft startups. Their whole goal has completely shifted. They aren't trying to win a fight against you. They're trying to solve a relationship puzzle with you. They'll communicate with deep sincerity, but make no mistake, they absolutely do not negotiate their boundaries. They'll state them clearly, and they will put their foot down. Which brings us to our final sign. Patience is not permission. The hard limit of the rebuilt. Because they know exactly what it feels like to be totally broken, a person who healed alone is very often the most deeply forgiving, supportive partner you could ever ask for. But that patience comes with a very hard, absolute, non-negotiable expiration date. Always remember this. Respect is like oxygen. Without it, the relationship literally cannot breathe. You can't just keep poking a good person, repeatedly testing their boundaries, and then play the victim when they finally snap. They'll give you chances, sure, and they'll fight for the relationship, but only as long as they aren't the only ones fighting. The very second they realize they are being systematically devalued, they aren't going to scream or shout. They'll simply replace you with peace. It's not them being cold. They are just entirely done being strong for people who wouldn't do the exact same for them. And that brings us to the conclusion. Be the list. So how do we actually apply all of this to our own lives? Well, the best relationship advice you can take away from this explainer really comes down to these 3 steps. Step 1, identify the traits you desperately want in a partner. Things like honesty, loyalty, strength. Step 2, stop endlessly searching for them in other people and start embodying those exact traits yourself. Literally become the list. And step 3, track your boundaries. Build up your own emotional bank account using a tool like a 30-day relationship journal. Because when you are truly rebuilt, your empathy is going to feel like a safe, warm home to the right people. And only the right people will be allowed to stay. So I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative question to reflect on. Are you currently in your own silent forage rebuilding phase? If you are, please do not rush the process. Let this silence make you strong. And hey, if you want to make absolutely sure you aren't carrying past toxic behaviors, what psychologists call the 4 horsemen, into your brand new rebuilt life, make sure to explore our relationship pitfalls quiz. Embrace the forge, protect your peace, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.
Hope you liked the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel